Chapter 1. The Complaint. Carla Brinks had not planned to cry. She had planned to complain. That was different. Complaining was controlled. Complaining meant sitting at her parents' kitchen table with a mug of coffee she didn't really want, venting in tidy paragraphs, and leaving with sympathetic noises and maybe a joke about how all men were hopeless after marriage. Crying implied surprise. She sat across from her mother, Ellen, who had folded her hands around her own mug and was watching Carla with the patient stillness of someone who had raised a child without confusing indulgence for love. Her father, Robert, leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, listening without interruption. That alone should have made Carla suspicious. "He just doesn't try anymore," Carla said finally. "That's the problem. I feel like I'm married to a routine." Her mother nodded once. Her father said nothing. Carla pressed on, encouraged by the silence. "When we were dating, he planned things. He surprised me. Now everything is practical, predictable. If I didn't suggest date night, we'd probably just sit on the couch every evening until we died." Robert raised an eyebrow. "That sounds efficient." Carla shot him a look. "Dad, I'm listening," he said mildly. She exhaled, pushing her hair back. She dressed carefully for this visit. Nice sweater, subtle makeup, the kind she wore to brunch with friends. She didn't notice that detail yet. "He works, he comes home tired, he eats, he sleeps. Repeat. I don't feel pursued. I feel like furniture." Ellen tilted her head. "And when did this start?" Carla frowned. "I don't know. Slowly. After the wedding, I guess." "After the wedding," Robert repeated. "Not after the marriage." Carla ignored that. "I just want to feel like he wants me, like I matter." Ellen's voice was gentle. "Carla, what does trying look like to you?" "That's obvious," Carla said. "Planning things, making me feel special, being spontaneous." Robert leaned forward. "When is he supposed to do that?" She blinked. "What?" "He leaves the house at 6, Robert said. "Gets home after 7 most nights. You've mentioned that before. So when is the spontaneous window?" Carla crossed her arms. "Plenty of men manage." "Do they work 60 hours a week?" Ellen asked. "That's his choice," Carla said quickly. "I didn't ask him to." "No," Robert said. "You asked for the life it provides." The words landed heavier than Carla expected. Ellen intervened before Carla could respond defensively. "Tell me something. What does Hank do that you don't notice?" Carla scoffed. "I notice things." "List them," Robert said. She opened her mouth, then paused. "He pays the bills, fixes things, takes the car in when it needs work." "And does he announce those things?" Ellen asked. "No," Carla said. "But those are just responsibilities." Robert nodded. "And what responsibilities do you announce?" Carla felt irritation stir. "This isn't about me." Her father studied her for a long moment, then spoke quietly. "When did you become so selfish?" The word hit like cold water. Carla straightened. "Excuse me? When was the last time you did something for him?" Robert continued. "Not something you wanted that required his participation. Something solely for him." Carla laughed, sharp and dismissive. "I cook. Because you like cooking," Ellen said calmly. "I plan trips," Carla said. "Trips you post about," Robert added. "Trips your friends praise." Carla felt heat creep up her neck. "That's unfair." "Is it untrue?" Ellen asked. Silence stretched. Carla searched her memory, suddenly aware of how loud it was. Dates she'd planned because she wanted ambience. Gifts she'd chosen because they photographed well. Compliments she'd accepted without returning. Her voice faltered. She tried again. "I don't keep score." Robert leaned back again. "You are. You're just only counting what you don't get." Ellen sighed softly. "Carla, you're sitting here angry because your husband isn't a dancing monkey. But what are you giving him in return?" Carla's mouth opened, closed. "He is steady," Ellen continued. "Loyal. Exhaustingly dependable. And what does he come home to?" "A wife who spends more time getting dressed for her friends than for her husband," Robert said, not unkindly. "Who complains he isn't spontaneous while leaving no room for it." "That's not." Carla stopped herself. "When is he supposed to surprise you?" Ellen asked. "Between deadlines? Over time? The life you enjoy but resent him for maintaining." The room felt smaller. Ellen leaned forward now, voice firm. "You are going to lose your husband if you keep giving more of yourself to your friends and letting their failed relationships set the standard for your happy marriage." Carla's eyes burned. "I didn't say we were unhappy," she whispered. Robert met her gaze. "You didn't have to." The truth settled slowly, painfully. Carla had come to complain. She left with a question she couldn't answer, and a silence she'd helped create. Chapter 2. The accounting. Carla drove home with the radio off. She told herself it was because she wanted quiet, but the truth was harsher. She didn't trust music not to tell her how she was supposed to feel. Every song suddenly seemed accusatory. Too romantic, too bitter, too cheerful. Silence, at least, let her pretend she was still in control of the narrative. The streetlights blurred past as her parents' words replayed. Not in neat order but in sharp fragments. "When did you become so selfish? What are you giving him in return? You didn't have to say you were unhappy. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Her first instinct was still anger. Anger at the delivery, at the audacity of being challenged when she'd come for comfort. But beneath that, something worse had begun to stir. Recognition. At a red light, Carla caught her reflection in the rearview mirror. The sweater, the carefully styled hair. She dressed like she was meeting an audience, not her parents. She tried to remember the last time she'd put that much effort into a night that ended on their couch with Hank. The light turned green. She didn't move right away. Someone honked. "Okay," she muttered, pressing the gas. "Fine." By the time she pulled into their driveway, Hank's car was already there. That surprised her more than it should have. He was usually late on Tuesdays. She sat in the car for a moment, engine idling, as if bracing herself for a collision she couldn't yet see. Inside, the house smelled like garlic and something toasted. Bread, maybe. Hank was at the stove, sleeves rolled up, shoulders slightly hunched in concentration. He hadn't heard her come in. "Hey," she said. He turned, smile immediate and unguarded. "Hey, you're back early. Traffic wasn't bad. Lucky day." He gestured with the spoon. "I was experimenting. It might be edible." She watched him, really watched him, for the first time in a while. The faint lines at the corners of his eyes. The tired slump he never mentioned. The way he'd already set out 2 plates without thinking about it. "Do you want a glass of wine?" he asked. "I'm good," she said, then corrected herself. "Actually, yeah, sure." He poured it without comment and slid it across the counter. No flourish. No expectation of praise. Just habit. They ate at the island, trading light conversation about work, about a neighbor's overgrown hedge, about nothing that mattered. Carla nodded in the right places, laughed once where she was supposed to, all while her father's voice kept intruding. "You're only counting what you don't get." After dinner, Hank gathered the plates. Carla moved to help, then stopped. She'd offered to help so many times without actually doing it that the offer itself had become meaningless. "I'll get those," she said, taking the plates from his hands. He blinked. "You don't have to." "I know." She washed while he dried, an old rhythm that had somehow faded without either of them noticing. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. Exactly. It was practiced, efficient. Later, Hank settled on the couch with his laptop, answering emails. Carla sat beside him, phone in hand, scrolling. She paused at a photo from last weekend, brunch with friends. Her smile wide, posture perfect. She looked happy in the way people are happy when they're being seen. She glanced at Hank. He was frowning slightly at the screen, jaw tight. She realized she didn't know what project he was working on anymore. Not because he hadn't told her, because she hadn't asked. "When did you start working on the Hamilton account?" she asked. He looked up, surprised. A couple months ago." "Oh," she swallowed. "How is it?" He hesitated, then shrugged. "Busy. Challenging. Good though." She nodded, unsure what to do with that information. Compliment him? Encourage him? She'd forgotten the mechanics. After a moment, Hank closed the laptop. "Everything okay?" "Yes," she said too quickly. Then softer, "I think so." He studied her for a second, then leaned back. "You went to your parents." "I did." "How was that?" Carla considered lying. It would have been easier, familiar, but her mother's voice cut through her hesitation. Bluntly, "Carla, they didn't agree with me," she said. Hank's mouth twitched. About you." That earned her his full attention. "Should I be concerned?" She almost smiled. "No, I think I should." He waited, patient as always, not pressing. That patience suddenly felt heavy with everything she'd taken for granted. "They said some things I didn't like," she admitted. "But I can't say they were wrong." Hank exhaled slowly. "That sounds ominous." "It's not," she said. "Just uncomfortable." He nodded. "Those are usually the useful conversations." She stared at him. "How did you get so reasonable?" He laughed. "Years of practice. Mostly at work." There it was again. Work. Always work. She treated it like an excuse instead of the effort it was. That night, Carla lay awake longer than Hank. His breathing evened out beside her. The steady presence she'd once found reassuring and lately found dull. Now she wondered when reassurance had stopped being enough for her, and why she'd never considered what she brought to the equation. She mentally reviewed the past year, as if tallying receipts. The vacations she'd wanted. The dinners she'd chosen. The friends she'd prioritized. The complaints she'd aired. The column labeled for Hank was alarmingly sparse. The next morning, she woke before him. That alone felt rebellious. She padded into the kitchen, staring at the coffee maker like it was a foreign object. He liked his coffee strong. No sugar. She knew that. She'd just let him make it himself for so long it felt like trivia instead of intimacy. When he shuffled in, hair sticking up, he stopped short. "Is that coffee?" She slid a mug toward him. "I thought I'd try." He took a sip, eyebrows lifting. "Wow, you remembered." The words stung more than they should have. "I'm trying to remember a lot of things," she said. He studied her, searching for the catch. "Okay, that was the problem." She realized as he took another sip. There was no catch. There never had been. The accounting had begun, and the balance was not in her favor. Chapter 3. The space between. Carla approached self-improvement the way she approached unfamiliar gym equipment. With determination, minimal understanding, and the quiet certainty that she was about to embarrass herself. She started with lists. Not written ones, those felt performative, but mental bullet points that followed her through the day like an anxious assistant. Do something for Hank. No announcements. No expecting praise. Don't make it weird. By noon, it was already weird. She texted him a simple message while at work. Hope your meeting goes well. She stared at the phone afterward, resisting the urge to add an emoji, or an explanation, or a follow-up clarifying that she wasn't fishing for gratitude. When he replied with a single thanks red heart, her stomach fluttered in a way that felt both ridiculous and revealing. She hadn't realized how transactional their communication had become until a basic kindness felt like a novelty. That evening, Carla left work early. She didn't tell Hank. That alone felt like rebellion. At the grocery store, she wandered the aisles without a plan, quickly realizing how much of her cooking had revolved around her own preferences. She paused in front of the snack aisle, staring at a familiar brand of pretzels. He liked those. He always bought them. She never touched them. She put 2 bags in the cart, then hesitated and put 1 back. This wasn't about excess. It was about intention. At home, she moved quietly, as if the walls themselves might accuse her of insincerity. She changed into jeans and a sweater, comfortable, not styled, felt oddly vulnerable. She started dinner. Halfway through, she realized she'd chosen a recipe Hank liked but she tolerated. That felt correct, also mildly annoying. Growth apparently was inconvenient. When Hank walked in, she was stirring with unnecessary intensity. He stopped short in the doorway. What's going on? She jumped. Nothing. He sniffed the air. That smells like my favorite? Yes, she said too quickly. I mean, yeah, I thought I'd make it. He smiled, cautious but pleased. Did I forget a birthday? No. An anniversary? No. Okay, he said slowly. Should I be worried? She laughed despite herself. No. Please don't make this a thing. He raised his hands. I am not making it a thing. I am merely observing a delightful anomaly. They ate at the table this time, not the island. Carla forced herself to sit still, to listen, to ask questions without steering the conversation back to herself. It was harder than she expected. So, she said, how did the meeting go? He blinked. Good. Long. What part was frustrating? He considered that. The part where everyone pretended they'd read the prep materials. She smiled. Classic. After dinner, Hank reached for the dishes, then paused when Carla stood first. I've got it, she said. You cooked. I know. He watched her, curiosity replacing surprise. Okay. Later, they sat on opposite ends of the couch. The space between them felt suddenly visible, like a piece of furniture she'd just noticed blocking the room. Carla shifted closer. Not all the way, just enough. Hank noticed. He didn't comment. He never did. That restraint had once annoyed her. Now it felt like trust. The next day, she tried spontaneity. This was a mistake. She showed up at Hank's office at lunchtime with sandwiches from his favorite deli, feeling pleased and slightly smug. She hadn't told him. She'd just done something. The receptionist smiled brightly. Can I help you? I'm here to see Hank Brinks, Carla said. It's a surprise. The receptionist's smile tightened. He's in a meeting. Oh, that's fine. I'll wait. It's a client meeting. Carla sat anyway, sandwiches growing colder and her confidence withering. 40 minutes later, Hank emerged, mid-sentence, then stopped dead when he saw her. Carla. She stood, suddenly aware of how unplanned she must look. Hi. Surprise. He glanced back toward the conference room. I'm still technically. Oh, she said quickly. I didn't realize. I can just. No, it's okay, he said torn. She held up the bag. I brought lunch. I can leave it. His expression softened, then shifted to guilt. I wish you'd texted. I could've. I know, she said, forcing a smile. That one's on me. She handed him the bag like an apology disguised as a gift. He kissed her cheek, lingering a second longer than usual. Thank you, he said quietly. She left before the embarrassment could metastasize into resentment. In the car, she laughed at herself. Spontaneous, she muttered. Nailed it. At night, she didn't tell him how awkward it had been. She didn't log it as effort. She didn't expect reimbursement. Instead, she noticed something else. Hank seemed lighter. Not dramatically, just present. He talked more, laughed easier. When she rested her head on his shoulder, he leaned into it. On Friday, her friends texted about drinks. She stared at the message longer than necessary. Her instinct was to say yes, to put on something flattering, to be admired. The thought felt hollow now. She typed, can't tonight. Rain check. There was a pause. Then, everything okay? Yeah, she replied, just choosing something else. She set the phone down before doubt could intervene. That evening, she and Hank cooked together. It was clumsy and loud and mildly disastrous. Sauce splattered. Pan smoked. Hank burned his finger and swore creatively. Carla laughed until her stomach hurt. "This is what you wanted?" he asked, grinning. "Chaos." "No," she said. "This is what I forgot." They ate on the couch, legs tangled, no phones. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't Instagram-worthy. But when Hank rested his head against hers and sighed, a sound of contentment, not exhaustion, Carla felt the space between them narrow. Not closed, but finally acknowledged. Chapter 4, the friend's table. Carla had worn black. Not the dramatic kind, no plunging neckline, no statement jewelry, but a simple dress she owned for reasons she could not remember. It wasn't chosen to impress. That alone felt like progress. The restaurant was loud in the way Carla usually loved. Clinking glasses, overlapping conversations, laughter rising and falling like waves. Tonight, it felt like walking into a room where everyone already knew the script but her. "Finally," Jenna said, sliding over to make room. "We were starting to think you ditched us for domestic bliss." Carla smiled, polite and careful. "Traffic." Maya leaned across the table, eyes bright. "You look rested. Did Hank take you away somewhere?" "No," Carla said. "We stayed home." Pause followed, brief but unmistakable. "Oh," Jenna said. "Cute." Carla took her seat and set her phone face down on the table. That earned her a look from Lauren, who was already scrolling. "Who does that anymore?" Lauren asked. "What if something happens?" Carla shrugged. "Then I'll hear about it later." Wine arrived. Appetizers followed. The conversation rolled on without her, orbiting divorces, bad dates, and men who had apparently all received the same memo on how to disappoint. "He just stopped trying," Maya said, stabbing a calamari ring with purpose. "Like the wedding was the finish line." "Exactly," Jenna said. "They get comfortable. You have to keep them on their toes." Carla felt the old reflex stir, the urge to nod, to join in, to trade stories like currency. She opened her mouth, then closed it. "When did it become a competition?" she asked instead. They all looked at her. "A competition?" Jenna repeated. "Yeah," Carla said. "Who's winning? Who's settling? Who's trying harder?" Lauren snorted. "Carla, it's not a competition. It's survival." Maya tilted her head. "Is this about Hank?" Carla took a sip of wine she suddenly didn't want. "It's about me." That got their attention. "I've spent a lot of time talking about what I'm not getting," she continued, choosing her words with care. "And not a lot of time thinking about what I'm giving." Jenna laughed lightly. "You're married. You're giving plenty." Carla shook her head. "I thought so too." Maya frowned. "Did something happen?" "No," Carla said. "That's kind of the point." Lauren leaned back, arms crossed. "Careful. That's how it starts." "How what starts?" "Making excuses for them," Lauren said. "Lowering your standards." Carla felt a flicker of irritation. "Or maybe raising them. Just differently." Jenna rolled her eyes. "Okay. But don't tell me you're suddenly thrilled with date night on the couch." Carla smiled, small but genuine. "I'm thrilled with the person on the couch." Silence again. Longer this time. Maya cleared her throat. "You're saying you're happy." "I'm saying I'm choosing it," Carla replied. Lauren scoffed. "That's cute. Let us know how that works out." The words landed sharper than Carla expected. She felt the familiar pull, the desire to soften, to joke, to retreat. Instead, she stayed where she was. "I don't need you to agree," she said evenly. "But I'm not going to complain about my husband to make myself feel included." Jenna blinked. "Wow. I know," Carla said. "It surprised me too." The conversation limped on after that, never quite regaining its rhythm. Carla laughed when appropriate, listened more than she spoke. She noticed how often complaints were met with applause, how cynicism passed for wisdom. When the check came, Jenna reached for it automatically. "I've got my share," Carla said, pulling out her card. "You sure?" Maya asked. "Hank's not footing the bill?" Carla met her eyes. "We both are." Outside, the night air felt cooler than she expected. The group hugged, promises made and half meant. As Carla walked to her car, her phone buzzed. "How's dinner?" Hank had texted. She smiled and typed back. "Interesting. Want dessert when I get home?" His reply came quickly. "Always." At home, Hank was already in sweatpants, kitchen light on. He looked up when she walked in. "Hey," he said. "You hungry?" "For sugar," she said. "And conversation." He grinned. "I can do one of those well." They sat at the table with a pint of ice cream between them, passing it back and forth. Carla told him about the dinner. "Not everything, but enough." "They think I'm settling," she said. Hank winced. "Ouch. They think choosing you means lowering my standards." He considered that. "Well, I am pretty tall." She laughed, then sobered. "I didn't defend you the way I should have before." He shrugged. "I didn't need defending." "I did," she said quietly. He looked at her then. Really looked. "You okay?" She nodded. "I think I am. I don't want to live like I'm waiting for something better." Hank reached across the table, fingers curling around hers. Neither do I. They finished the ice cream in comfortable silence. Later, as they got ready for bed, Carla caught her reflection in the mirror. No makeup, hair pulled back, face relaxed. She looked like someone who had chosen her life on purpose. And for the first time in a long while, that felt like enough. Chapter 5, the question repeated. The question arrived on a Thursday night, disguised as a normal sentence. Carla almost missed it. They were folding laundry in the living room, an unremarkable task, performed with the quiet efficiency of people who had done it together long enough to stop narrating it. Hank paired socks with the same concentration he brought to everything else. Carla folded shirts, slower than necessary, her mind elsewhere. "Can I ask you something?" Hank said. She didn't look up. "Of course." He hesitated, and that made her glance over. Hank rarely hesitated. He believed in momentum, in finishing what he started. "Are you happy?" The air shifted. Carla set the shirt down carefully. The question echoed, too similar to her father's, too precise to dodge. "Yes," she said, then stopped herself. "I think so." Hank nodded once. "Okay." She frowned. "That's it. What were you expecting?" he asked gently. A follow-up, a reaction. He smiled faintly. "I didn't want to turn it into an interrogation." She studied him. "Are you happy?" He resumed folding. "Most days." "That's not an answer." He shrugged. "It's an honest one." Carla leaned back against the couch, knees pulled up. "Why now?" He exhaled slowly. "Because things feel different." "Different how?" "Better," he said quickly. "But also uncertain." Her chest tightened. "Uncertain?" Hank looked at her then. Really looked. "You've been trying." She blinked. "I haven't been keeping score." "I know," he said. "That's how I noticed." The words landed softly, but they carried weight. "I don't want you doing this out of guilt," he continued. "Or because someone told you you should." Carla swallowed. "My parents." He chuckled. "I figured." She winced. "They were direct. I like them." "I know." Silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable but loaded. "Hank," she said finally, "have you ever thought about leaving?" The question surprised both of them. He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was steady. "I've thought about what it would mean if you did." Her throat tightened. "I didn't realize." "You weren't supposed to," he said. "I didn't want you carrying that." She shook her head. "You've been carrying everything." He smiled, a little tired. "I signed up for that." "No," she said firmly. "You didn't sign up to disappear." That got his attention. "I haven't disappeared," he said. "No," she agreed. "You've been here the whole time. I just stopped seeing you." The honesty startled her with its ease. She hadn't rehearsed it. Felt like something that had been waiting. Hank set the socks aside. "Can I be honest too?" "Please." "I got used to being needed," he said. "Providing. Handling things. It felt safe." She nodded. "And I got used to benefiting from that." He tilted his head. "Is that why you're changing?" She met his gaze. "No. I'm changing because I don't want to lose you by assuming you'll always be here." The words hung between them. "I'm not going anywhere," Hank said quietly. "I know," she replied. "That's what scares me. That I treated that like a guarantee instead of a gift." He reached for her hand, thumb brushing her knuckles. "Carla, I don't need grand gestures." "I know," she said. "I needed to learn that." He smiled, genuine this time. "So, are you happy?" She considered the question again, letting it settle properly. "I'm happier than I was," she said. "And I want to keep getting better at it, with you." He squeezed her hand. "I'd like that." Later that night, lying in bed, Carla stared at the ceiling while Hank slept beside her. His breathing was steady, familiar, comforting. She thought about how close she'd come to mistaking familiarity for stagnation. How easy it would have been to keep complaining instead of looking inward. The question had been repeated, not as an accusation, but as an invitation. "Are you happy?" This time, she knew the answer wasn't a destination. It was a choice she'd have to keep making. And for the first time, she was making it with open eyes. Chapter 6. Doing without applause. Carla discovered very quickly that doing the right thing quietly was much harder than doing the right thing loudly. There was no audience for it. No immediate payoff. No reassuring echo of approval to confirm she was on the correct path. Just the act itself and whatever intention she brought to it. The first real test came on a Tuesday. Hank had left before dawn. A note scribbled on the counter explaining an early meeting and apologizing for forgetting to refill the coffee filter. Carla read it while still half asleep, hair wild, wrapped in one of his old sweatshirts. Normally, she would have smiled at the note, maybe texted him something affectionate, then moved on with her day. Instead, she folded the paper and slipped it into her pocket. At work, she overheard coworkers planning a happy hour. The old reflex twitched. She almost joined in, almost agreed to go, almost reached for her phone to check if Hank had anything planned. She stopped herself. At lunch, she drove to the hardware store. The cashier eyed her skeptically as she placed the items on the counter. "You sure you want all that?" "No," Carla said honestly. But I'm committed. At home, she changed into clothes she didn't care about and stared at the loose cabinet hinge Hank had been meaning to fix for months. Not because he was lazy, because he was always doing something more urgent. She knelt, adjusted the screwdriver, and immediately stripped the screw. Okay, she muttered. That's fine. This is fine. 2 YouTube tutorials later, she had managed not to make it worse. When Hank came home that night, the cabinet still sagged slightly, but it no longer threatened to detach entirely. He noticed it as he reached for a glass. Did you? He paused, opening and closing it once. You fixed this. She shrugged, casual to the point of forced indifference. Sort of. He smiled. Thank you. That was it. No fanfare. No speech. No parade. Carla waited for the familiar flicker of disappointment. It didn't come. Instead, there was something quieter, satisfying in a way she hadn't expected. The next day, she found herself reaching for her phone less often. When she did, it wasn't to document or report. It was to check in. Did you eat lunch? How'd the presentation go? Drive safe. Hank replied when he could. Never pressured, never suspicious. If he noticed the change, he didn't comment on it. That, too, was part of the lesson. On Friday evening, Carla declined another invitation. This time, she didn't explain. She and Hank ordered takeout and ate on the floor, backs against the couch, watching a movie neither of them was particularly invested in. Halfway through, Hank muted it. Can I ask you something else? He said. She smiled. You're on a roll. Are you doing all this for me? He asked. The question caught her off guard. She considered it carefully. I started for you, she admitted. I'm continuing because of who I don't want to be anymore. He nodded. That makes sense. She tilted her head. You're not worried? About that I'll get tired of it. Or bored. Hank thought for a moment. I think people get tired when they're performing, not when they're choosing. Her throat tightened. You've always done things without applause, she said quietly. I never noticed how invisible that made you. He smiled gently. I didn't do it to be seen. I know, she said. That's why I need to. Later that night, Carla lay awake again. But this time, the thoughts weren't accusatory. They were observational. She noticed how Hank locked the doors every night without fail. How he set the thermostat lower than he preferred because she slept better that way. How he refilled her gas tank whenever he borrowed her car. None of it was romantic in the way movies promised. All of it was intimate in ways she'd been too distracted to value. The next morning, she got up early and packed his lunch. Not because he couldn't. Not because she wanted credit. Just because she could. She left it in the fridge with no note. When he texted her later, lunch surprise was appreciated. She smiled but didn't respond right away. She let the moment exist without needing to hold it. That afternoon, she met her mother for coffee. You seem lighter, Ellen observed. I stopped narrating my life, Carla said. Turns out it's quieter without an audience. Ellen smiled knowingly. The quiet things last longer. That night, Hank came home exhausted. Carla said nothing about dinner plans, just took his coat, kissed his cheek, and handed him a plate. He looked at her, eyes soft. You're good to me. She met his gaze. So are you. There was no scorekeeping in that moment. No tally. No leverage. Just two people finally seeing the same effort from opposite sides. Chapter 7 Scene. Hank didn't say anything at first. That was his way. He noticed. He adjusted. He waited to see if something held before trusting it. Carla knew that now. The proof came on a Saturday morning when she woke to an empty bed and the sound of movement downstairs. For a brief, disorienting moment, her old instinct flared. He left early again. Then she heard the clatter of pans and the unmistakable hiss of something cooking. She padded down the stairs, following the smell. Hank stood at the stove in jeans and a t-shirt, hair still damp from the shower. He glanced over his shoulder and smiled. Not sheepish, not surprised. Morning, he said. She leaned against the doorway. You're up early. So are you. I was following the scent, she said. Is that bacon? And eggs, he said. And coffee. The good kind. She crossed the room and kissed his cheek. He smelled like soap and warmth. What's the occasion? She asked. He shrugged, flipping an egg. None. She studied him, trying not to overanalyze the moment. Okay. They ate at the table, sunlight slanting through the windows. It felt like a beginning, which made Carla nervous. She reminded herself that beginnings didn't need to announce themselves. After breakfast, Hank cleared the dishes without being asked. Carla noticed and didn't rush to compete. They spent the day running errands together, unremarkable and oddly pleasant. At the hardware store, Hank stopped in front of a display of drawer pulls. Didn't you say the kitchen ones were loose? He asked. I fixed one, she said. Mostly. He smiled. Team effort, then. She laughed. I like that. Later, loading bags into the car, Hank paused. Carla? Yeah. I want to tell you something, he said, without you feeling like you need to respond. She closed the trunk and leaned against the car. Okay. I noticed when you stopped talking about us like a problem to solve, he said. and started treating us like something worth tending. Her chest tightened. I didn't know if it would last, he continued, so I didn't want to put pressure on it. But I want you to know. It mattered. She swallowed. I wasn't trying to impress you. I know, he said softly. That's why it worked. That night, Hank suggested a walk. Not planned. Not framed as romance. Just a suggestion made in passing. They strolled through their neighborhood as the sky dimmed, hands brushing until they naturally intertwined. Carla realized she wasn't waiting for anything to happen. She was already in it. Do you remember our first apartment? Hank asked. She laughed. The one with the radiator that sounded like it was possessed? And the neighbors who fought exclusively at midnight, he said. And the couch we found on the curb, she added. I still can't believe we took that. It was comfortable, he said. And free, she smiled. You've always had a talent for seeing value where other people see inconvenience. He glanced at her. You saying that about furniture or about me? Both, she said without hesitation. They stopped at the corner, the streetlight flickering on above them. Hank, she said, why didn't you ever tell me you were feeling overlooked? He considered the question. Because I didn't feel neglected. I felt assumed. The word landed gently, devastating in its precision. I thought if I stayed steady, he continued, you'd come back around eventually. I didn't want to make love feel like a negotiation. She squeezed his hand. I'm sorry I made you invisible. You didn't mean to, he said. But you see me now. She nodded. I do. And she did fully finally. Not as the provider, not as the constant, not as the reliable background presence. As a man who had been choosing her all along. That night, they talked in bed until the room went dark and quiet. Not about problems. About memories. About small dreams they'd never said out loud because they hadn't seemed important enough. When Carla fell asleep, it was with Hank's arm around her waist and a sense of calm she hadn't felt in years. Being seen, she realized, wasn't about attention. It was about recognition. And Hank had given her the space to grow into it. Chapter 8. The choice. Carla hadn't planned to say it out loud. That was the irony of it. She'd spent years narrating her dissatisfaction to anyone who would listen. And now that the words actually mattered, she felt no urge to rehearse them. The opportunity came on a Sunday afternoon, ordinary and inconvenient. They were at Jenna's apartment for a birthday gathering. The place buzzed with noise and perfume and the clink of glasses. Carla stood near the window, Hank beside her, his hand resting lightly at the small of her back. Not possessive, just present. Jenna was holding court near the kitchen island, already halfway through her second glass of wine. So, Jenna said, voice loud enough to carry, tell me you've at least thought about a getaway. You can't tell me married life hasn't killed all your spontaneity. A few heads turned. Carla felt the familiar pressure rise, the expectation that she'd play her part, that she'd laugh, roll her eyes, say something vaguely dismissive about Hank's schedule. She glanced at him instead. He met her eyes, neutral, unbothered. He wasn't bracing. He wasn't waiting to be defended. He trusted her. Carla took a breath. Actually, she said, smiling, married life didn't kill anything. I just stopped paying attention for a while. Jenna blinked. Okay? I thought excitement was something someone else was supposed to provide for me, Carla continued. Turns out it's something you build. Lauren scoffed from the couch. That's a nice speech. Let's see how it holds up. Carla nodded. Fair. But I'm not auditioning. The room went quiet in that way only social spaces do when the script changes unexpectedly. I choose my husband, Carla said simply. Not because it's easy. Because it's worth it. Hank's hand tightened slightly at her back. Jenna forced a laugh. Well, that's mature. Carla smiled. I'm working on it. Later, in the car, Hank glanced over at her. You didn't have to do that. I know, she said. I wanted to. He nodded, thoughtful. How does it feel? She considered the question. Solid. At home, they kicked off their shoes and collapsed onto the couch, the quiet settling around them like a reward. I used to think choosing you meant giving something up, Carla said. Now I think it means I finally stopped shopping for a life I already had. Hank smiled. I was never worried about competition. I was, she admitted. With everyone else's opinions. He took her hand. I don't need to be chosen loudly. She leaned into him. I know, but I wanted to choose you where it counted. They sat like that for a long time. No phones, no plans, just the steady comfort of having arrived somewhere together. Carla thought of her parents' kitchen table, of the question that had stopped her cold. When was the last time you did something for him? She smiled to herself. Today, she had done something far bigger. She had chosen him clearly, publicly, and without apology. And tomorrow, she would choose him again. Chapter 9. The Quiet Things. Sunday evening arrived without ceremony. No plans. No reservations. No effort to make it memorable. That, Carla realized, was exactly what made it perfect. She stood at the kitchen counter chopping vegetables while Hank moved around her and practiced arcs. Opening drawers she didn't need yet. Setting a pot on the stove before she asked. Filling the kettle because he knew she'd want tea later. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. The house felt lived in, not staged. Carla caught herself smiling at nothing. "Why are you grinning like that?" Hank asked, glancing over his shoulder. "No reason," she said. "Just noticing." He smiled back. "Good things. The best kind." They ate at the table, legs brushing, the easy intimacy of people who weren't performing for the moment. Afterward, Hank washed while Carla dried, passing plates back and forth in quiet rhythm. Later, they settled on the couch, Carla curled against Hank's side, his arm around her shoulders. The television played something neither of them was watching. "Hank," she said. Thank you." "For what?" She thought about it. "For staying. For not making love feel like something I had to earn back." He kissed the top of her head. "You were always worth staying for." She closed her eyes, letting the weight of that settle. The quiet stretched, not empty, but full. Carla thought back to the woman she'd been only weeks ago, sitting at her parents' kitchen table, convinced she was owed something she couldn't quite name. She'd been loud with dissatisfaction and blind to devotion. She'd wanted proof, spectacle, reassurance that love was still alive. She'd missed the truth because it hadn't been flashy. Love had been there in the early mornings and late nights, in the gas tank always full, in the thermostat adjusted without comment, in the patience of a man who loved her enough to let her grow at her own pace. "Hank," she said softly. "Yeah. I'm glad I didn't lose you before I learned how to keep you." He turned slightly, looking down at her. "I'm glad you learned without having to." They stayed like that until the room grew dim and the world narrowed to the sound of shared breathing. Later, as they got ready for bed, Carla caught her reflection in the mirror again. Older than the woman who'd married Hank 3 years earlier, but steadier, less polished, more real. She slipped into bed beside him, fitting easily against his side. As she drifted towards sleep, one thought surfaced clearly, without fear or doubt. Love wasn't loud. It didn't clap for itself. It showed up, every day, in 1,000 quiet ways and stayed. And this time Carla saw it.